Greetings, this is Carol. I would like to share with you the following agenda in this presentation. We will review yesterday's activities, which would also involve the review of the history of the Berlin Wall. And then today we would like to discuss the fall of the Berlin Wall and the following celebrations of freedom that happened after the wall was taken down, or during the time the wall was being taken down, the Pink Floyd rock concert and the classical music concert by the Berlin Philharmonic. In this satellite photo, you see a wall that has been erected for 28 years. You can see the yellow line basically cutting the city of Berlin in East Germany and West Germany in half, thus dividing East from West, Russia and China up against the United States and Western Europe. And this Berlin Wall, because it was a point of meeting between the two different cultures, came to represent the Cold War and what is called the Iron Curtain. The Iron Curtain was seen as something that belonged to the Russians, and they would often keep their people back behind the curtain and not seen by Western nations at all. During the first part of this unit, where we were talking about communism and capitalism and the end of World War II, we played a game with rock, paper, and scissors, where there would be two rounds. The first round, each student was given 4 tokens, and when they played a round and lost, they would give a token to their opponent. When they played a round and won, they would get a token from their opponent, and at the end of this round or set, the winner would be the person holding the most tokens, and that person would be given a large Snicker candy bar. Then we went and we played the second round. And the second round, everybody had 4 tokens, and then they would play all their different games with each other. And if you lost a round, you give a token back and forth. And here's a picture of the Berlin Wall and with the artwork. This was actual artwork that people would look at and put on the wall. And if you were caught in the dead ground there, you were actually shot by the East German soldiers. Okay, going back to our game, if you lost all your tokens, you would go to the teacher and get more. And if you had 8 tokens, you won, and 8 tokens, you had to go give the teacher 4 tokens back. And then at the end, the Snickers candy bar was divided evenly and given to each one of the students. Okay, and then we talked about it, and we see why so many people fled the East to come to the West. Here we have President Reagan, and he had invited the Russian leader Gorbachev. Gorbachev is sitting to the right of President Reagan there. Invited him to show him that the German people are actually one, and then the city of Berlin was actually one, and that this wall was very artificial, and requested that he lower the wall and allow this country to be united as one Germany, and Gorbachev agreed, and the first day of this was November 9th, 1989, and you can see President Reagan standing there and his wife on the left there. Okay, so our game, we talked about capitalism, we talked about communism, and we compared and contrasted them. Here's November 9th, 1989. You can see in the early morning hours, people started climbing on that wall, and they sat on that wall. One day earlier, they would have been shot for doing that. So they really, the West German people and the East German people really celebrated the demise of this symbol of the Cold War. You can see the word freedom written on the left side, top left side, and then people reaching over and greeting their friends and family that they haven't seen for 28 years across the wall there. And then on the right side, you see the beginnings of the wall's removal. And look at the Brandenburg Gate right here on the left side, right there, that's the Brandenburg Gate. Keep that in mind because that will help with later pictures. And then you see crowds of people standing on that wall. Everybody that could stand on that wall did stand on that wall. And then on the right side, you see the further removal of the wall. On the lower picture, you see the West Berlin looking into East Germany. And what you see in East Germany above the earth-moving equipment there is actual Russian soldiers, East German soldiers, that were not in favor of this move by Gorbachev. These were the very guys that shot people that tried to cross over into the West from the East. And here we have an actual celebration. I'm going to start playing my music. Music was used to celebrate the celebration of freedom. The first concert was by Pink Floyd, and he featured a number that was famous at the time called Freedom. Actually, Pink Floyd took a stage, and the wall was low at points, and he was able to bridge his stage across, going from east to west. So one side of the stage was on the west, one side of the stage was on the east, and he really celebrated brotherhood and unification by doing that. The classical music celebration featured Leonard Bernstein from New York. Leonard Bernstein was a composer-conductor most known for a Broadway musical called West Side Story that was then made on into a movie. And then he conducted the Berlin Philharmonic, and together they chose a piece of music by Ludwig van Beethoven, his very last symphony called Symphony No. 9. And we want to take a look at the reasons why they would have chosen that piece. Beethoven himself is part of the reason why, and this particular piece, there's a good reason for the choice of this particular piece of music. I will say this was a classical music international venture. The Berlin Philharmonic invited people from Russia, East Germany, West Germany, Poland, Spain, Britain, and England, and the United States to come join them on this stage. So truly it was an international outreach. In this picture you can see in the second floor on the back wall is the adult choir. On the floor in red is the children's choir. There are 4 singing soloists between the orchestra and the choirs, and there was more than 300 people on that stage. And it was televised, it was recorded. There is a DVD recording of it available, and it's also on YouTube, should you be interested in watching it. So why Beethoven, and why Beethoven's Ninth Symphony? Well, Beethoven himself, Ludwig van Beethoven, born 1770, died 1827. He had been known as a pianist from his preteen days, and became a composer and was commissioned to write pieces throughout his life. He was ethical and very well respected from his teen years. He ended up being head of household. His mother had died, his father fell apart, so he went to the courts and ended up being head of household and gained custody of his brothers and sisters and actually raised them using the monies he made as a piano player and as a composer. Was one thing that Beethoven, he loved the ideals of the French Revolution. In fact, I think he wrote his Third Symphony and intended it for Napoleon, and believing that at the time Napoleon believed in democracy and humanism, but turned out he was very disappointed that Napoleon was just another dictator. So he changed his dedication on his Third Symphony. But at the end of his life, he finally returned to something that he wanted to do from his early 20s, and that's to take a piece of music by a poet, Schiller, a humanistic poet, and his poem called Ode to Joy. And this poem celebrated freedom and equity for all people. And right now the theme is playing. Let me see if I can turn it up. Okay. Yeah, Schiller. We're going to be reading words in English from that poem, but like I said, Beethoven really wanted to play this. And as a side note, Beethoven was deaf when he wrote this piece of music at the end of his life. Many thought that Beethoven became deaf because of a sexually transmitted disease or possibly a addiction to a substance like heroin. But no, he actually died and suffered because of lead poisoning. That's what cost him his hearing, was lead poisoning. Here are the words of Schiller's Ode to Joy. Joy from truth's own glass of fire, sweetly on the searcher's smile. Less on virtue's deep she tire, joy the tedious path beguiles. High on faith's high hill before us, see her banner proudly wave. Joy too swells the angels' chorus, bursts the bondage of the grave. Okay, so you can see burst the bondage of the grave. The West saw that the East was in a type of death, so this was freedom from the grave. And in faith on high hills before us, the banner, waving banners of freedom. So that, again, here's More words from this poem. To the gods we ne'er can render praise for every good they grant. Let us with devotion tender minister to grief and want. Quenched be hate and wrath forever. Pardon be our mortal foe. May our tears abrade him never. No repentance bring him low. Sense of wrongs forget to treasure. Brethren, live in perfect love. In the starry realms above, God will meet us as we may measure. So, again, that brethren, live in perfect love. Here's the main theme of the chorus. So I'm going to turn it down a little bit now that it's played the main theme once. It's a very, very famous theme. Ideals of Western culture were celebrated in these concerts. Bernstein himself changed the word joy to freedom in this particular performance of Beethoven's Ninth. In the chorus, in the last movement of it, they sang Freud, which means joy. Instead of singing that word, they sang Freiheit, which means freedom, which works in German. It doesn't work in English, but it works in German. So these concerts, they celebrated freedom of speech, freedom of choice of worship and religion, freedom of commerce, freedom of movement without surveillance. I mean, in those countries, the government can choose to watch you without you knowing just for any reason. In our country, they have to have good reason. So there you have it. Communism versus capitalism, Western versus East, and who won that competition? Well, in this particular case with the Berlin Wall and the fall of it, it was Western culture. Okay? So in the next set of slides, we're going to look at before and after pictures of the area of the Berlin Wall, specifically surrounding, here it is, here's the before picture. You can see the guard shack. This is where a soldier would be with his machete or his machine gun, and if you tried to cross that wall, he would kill you. Okay, and then you can see how the east side doesn't have very much. Okay, and here's an after picture. You see how the east side developed quite a bit, and the west side has the same ornate building, and there's no wall. It's gone. Okay, here's before. Again, in the foreground there, you see the Brandenburg Gate, as we were talking about before, right there. And here's the wall. And there's very little structures other than the Brandenburg Gate there. And then the after picture's coming. I'm going to turn up the singing portion of this. Okay, see the foreground, the Brandenburg Gate, and see how much development has happened since then? How much has happened since the wall came down? Here's a picture of before, Brandenburg Gate again, and the wall, and people writing on the wall. You can see the symbol, the peace symbols, and the Brandenburg Gate afterwards, and the free flow of ideas, commerce, people, family. Berlin is no longer divided in two. They're now one city.